We are live one final time in our live studio here.
Is this the end, or this is the end here in this studio?
I have no idea. Part of me says this should be the final coronavirus journal video forever.
Yeah.
I've talked about this before because I literally think we have destroyed our YouTube channels by doing this show.
Yep. But then part of you thinks that 2020 and 2021 was just the first wave of all of this, and really we're going to look back and be like, we had no idea what was coming.
Yeah, and I think it is interesting to kind of keep up to date with this because the truth is, in a lot of places, like this has happened multiple times, but the deaths that are happening even today still might be more than the peak deaths at peak fear, back in early 2020.
Like May? Or March, April.
Yeah, when everybody was like, oh my God, we were looking at New York City and it was going crazy.
Yeah.
But now I feel like the deaths are still really bad. I think we're on like our fifth wave. We're moving on up right now.
We're going back up?
Yeah, just a little bit.
I mean, it's wintertime, right? Somewhere?
Let's check the numbers.
In the States, it's wintertime?
So we'll go full screen, PC. So, I mean, check it out. This is world here. So look, we're on the way up again.
Okay.
And this is peak fear back here. Remember this?
But these are cases. We've always said, don't look at the cases.
Okay, sorry. We'll look at
the deaths, man.
So, yeah. Peak fear back here. We're above that, and we're on the upswing again. And we're going into winter in the northern hemisphere. So
what's crazy is if you go from the very first peak and draw a line to the bottom of the peak we're at now, it's almost a steady, there's like a base trend.
Yeah.
In stocks, they'd be like, it's a support level. Coronavirus has found a support level around 5K deaths per day.
I always hear these doctors that have kind of contrarian views of, the lockdown or whatever. They always have this statement they say, which is the virus does what the virus does. And basically, like, you can try to wear masks and wash your hands and, clean off your Cheez-It box before you bring it in the house, but the virus will break through. And so kind of all of these things are futile, and really what we should be doing is protecting only the weak, and then everyone else should be kind of like getting on with their lives, but who knows.
How are we doing? Go to the U.S. though.
This is U.S. So you can see here our cases have just started to go back up in the last 2 weeks.
Wow, because 2 weeks ago I was thinking these cases are starting to really go down, and this could be the end of it all. Like, we've done several waves. This thing has lasted almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
I think this thing's about to really be over with, but the numbers are going back up. What do our death numbers look like?
So death numbers are certainly still on the way down.
Now, look at the peak of the final, like back in September.
Yeah.
You remember when all the news stories were like, this is the worst it's ever been, and the Delta variant is taking its toll in America. But if you look at it,
should I go back?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you should count the number of people underneath the slope and the curve, or you should just kind of look at the peak. But in some ways, it's maybe the second biggest wave of deaths. Mm-hmm. But in terms of a peak, I mean, it might even be the third peak. The first peak might have been bigger than the third one. But it definitely wasn't the worst ever, right? Last winter was clearly, by all metrics, worse than anything we dealt with the Delta variant. But the media sure made it feel like even the vaccine, they didn't want to say the vaccines aren't protecting, but that seems to be what was happening. I wanted to find some news clips from like, January, where it was like, if you just get vaccinated, there's 0% chance of death, and there's no breakthrough cases. And now, I can't remember if I've said this on this show before, but I know more people in my immediate family that have had breakthrough cases than what statistically should be possible. Kristen's mom got it. Kristen's grandmother got it, and she passed away.
Yeah, I don't think we've revealed that on this show.
My sister got it. I got it. I mean, I got it 13 days after being vaccinated, but like I just named 4 or 5 people in my immediate family circle, and we all had quote unquote breakthrough cases.
Right.
In a breakthrough case, I can still turn on like NPR and I hear them talking about it's 1 in 200,000 people. You know, it's some very tiny number, right?
Yep.
And I'm like, well, what is going on here? The breakthrough case is much higher than what anyone really wants to acknowledge. And now I'm sure we'll get into this with the show. We're doing all the booster shots.
Yeah.
And it's starting to get into like, well, are you truly vaccinated if you don't have the third and maybe the fourth and the fifth, you know, you double, triple vaccinated. It's like, did the science just change? Did we not know the science? I acknowledge that that's how things work. You say things, but without running the experiments, we don't know. But it sure feels like, was everyone being totally honest about what the vaccines were capable of doing back in November, December, January of this last year?
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting to see when the vaccine really came out and everybody started taking it, our death numbers really plummeted. But it's kind of strange to see it going back up now. But that reminded me, have you had the conversation with Elia Licardi about him collecting all the vaccines? Maybe he was having that when he was down here in Puerto Rico.
I think I misunderstood what he was saying because I thought he was saying I'm triple vaccinated and I've had multiple different vaccines. But
Yeah.
then I think he was just saying he got the booster shot already and triple vaccinated meant the third dose of the same. What was your...
Maybe I can't remember details, but he was telling me about some international photographer friend of his that was traveling from country to country, and every country has different rules and mandates and stuff, and maybe some of them, you know, different countries have different vaccines. And so he was like, my friend has had all of the vaccines. He's had Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Moderna, and then maybe another one or something. Because he just goes to these countries and they force him to get a shot because they don't have... He doesn't have the shot that country's giving out or whatever. And I said...
I didn't know they cared. Like when I went to Italy, they were like, oh, Johnson & Johnson? Cool.
You would think, right?
And if you had a vaccine card from another country, like the U.S., I feel like all of the
That
employees,
should be fine.
they didn't care at all.
And they don't know and they don't care. It's just a sheet of paper. But anyway, Elia was like holding this guy up as like the pinnacle of health. And I was like, I mean, I'm no anti-vaxxer, but I don't want to take all the vaccines.
Yeah.
You know, I had a really bad reaction to the single Johnson & Johnson shot, and now you and I and Kristen have been debating on whether I should get a booster now because it's that time.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I don't want to willingly give myself that reaction again, and I'm kind of expecting a worse reaction than I had the first time. Of course, her response was, well, wait till you feel the COVID reaction because she had a very bad COVID reaction. So she got triple vaxxed, right?
She got the booster. She had Pfizer.
And then are you going to do it?
I went with her to CVS because you go to the CVS website and it says you can get all these boosters and which ones did you get? And you have to enter in all this information, right?
Okay.
So I go with her, and of course, because it's Puerto Rico, we show up at 10:30 in the morning, and there's a line of people, and I'm like, this should just be like shot, wait 15 minutes and you leave. But it was like 30 minutes after our appointment, we finally get the vaccine, and as I'm sitting down to get it, I'm like, you know, she got Pfizer, but I'm Johnson & Johnson. And the lady's like, we don't have Johnson & Johnson here. You're going to get Pfizer. And I was like, I don't want Pfizer. And she looked at me like I'm crazy. And
see, I've heard at least somebody on the Facebook group I was in was saying that Johnson & Johnson plus one of the other ones, I thought it was Moderna, in some test proved to be the best.
Yeah.
If you mix and match those two. But it sounds so shady.
So I left not getting my booster shot. I was like, I'm not going to get... I felt like this crazy person, right? But my theory is...
You don't look like a crazy person.
No, I look totally together.
Yeah.
My thought was there's some debate out there if you should get the vaccine and is it going to be dangerous for you and long-term side effects and like whatever. I don't totally necessarily buy into that. But one thing I do know for certain is that if all three of these vaccines will help you not die from COVID, but there is some question and like concerns potentially, why would I take 2 or 3 of them and have a 100% chance of something going wrong 10 years from now, as opposed to just stick with the one that I got?
That seems reasonable to me.
I'm going to just stay with Johnson & Johnson. And you know what? If we find out something was wrong with Moderna, well, I didn't get that one. And I didn't mix and match. And like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Why would I take another vaccine? And you were saying that 2 of them combined might be the best. When you look at the way the studies work, The difference between like 80% effectiveness and 94% effectiveness to us looks like it's 14%, you know? And I don't know how they do the math. I forget how I dug down that rabbit hole once, but it's actually a much smaller percentage difference.
Well, and I think that was during their limited testing.
Right.
So I think it seems obvious to me that those numbers are no longer accurate when you know so many people with the breakthrough cases.
You would think that, but I don't know that they've revised those numbers.
I don't know that they will.
I think there's studies coming out today that are saying it's even more effective than we thought. But I'm like,
how can that be?
You know, and I don't have a problem getting COVID with the vaccine and being like, all right, they did tell us you wouldn't get COVID, but then they quickly said, well, you're not going to die from COVID. But now suddenly, like, you know, it was supposed to be rare if you got COVID after the vaccine, but now I know a lot of people that got COVID, and it's not after 6 months.
Yeah.
It's not, this is an argument for the booster. This is after like 2-3 months. Suddenly, like, hey, you know, Kristen's mom got COVID 3 months after she got the vaccine. She kind of got the vaccine a little bit later, and I'm like, that's definitely a breakthrough.
How bad did she feel?
She wasn't bad at all.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's good.
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter.
But, so, I don't know. I guess boosters are all coming our way.
Well, you got some videos for today's show.
Yep.
I did not. I did no preparation.
You did
for
no
this.
prep?
Yeah, I'm a bad partner on this one. I've been packing up the studio though, and you haven't helped at all. So I feel like we're kind of even though really I'm ahead of you because I've put in a lot more work. But
yeah, so we got to start breaking all this down.
Yeah, this cool gray wall behind Patrick here is just like a taped up piece of.
It's a gravity backdrop, hand-painted
Gravity
backdrop.
backdrop,
But if you
yeah.
go to our older videos, you can see the original wall color
Yeah.
that both of our homes probably have that we're buying in Puerto Rico. And I'm really looking forward to painting my new place and just having it look normal.
Yeah, everything here in Puerto Rico is painted yellow, and it drives me crazy. So you have officially bought a house.
I bought a house like I closed on a house in like 20 days. From a contract to closing, record-breaking time, and then got married like 4 days later.
Yeah.
So I've had a busy October.
I kind of have a contract that I've signed, kind of, but the owners haven't signed it. I don't know what's going on with my house. I feel like it's 80% chance we're getting our house, but if we don't, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm gonna live. It's such a weird position to be in. So,
But
yeah.
we may have multiple studios now. So like you might have your own office and maybe
Studios. So the house that I purchased, I do not like it. We could have bought like awesome houses a year ago.
we could have bought this house, which would have been one of the
I
best
should have bought
financial
this house.
decisions we ever made.
Yeah, I can't believe I didn't buy this house. And so now I bought this crap house that's like collapsing, and I have to do all this gut renovation work.
It's
I've
not
overpaid.
collapsing.
All right, it's not collapsing.
Until the
It's not
earthquake
that
hits.
bad,
Yeah.
but everything inside's horrible. And I've overpaid for it. You really overpaid for your house, and I'm just like, oh, like how bad did we mess up? And then we have this incredible studio here. You have your own floor with your own studio.
Often.
In the house that I bought, I have nowhere to film, so I'm having to turn the master bedroom into the office in the studio. And then my wife and I are living in this little ass
house.
Katie, all she wants is to just live in Puerto Rico. So yeah, I mean, yesterday I met the home inspector at the house, and we're going room by room, and this home inspector's like, "What are you paying for this house? Oh my gosh, have you seen this? Do you know what this house was worth 9 months ago?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know how much the house was worth 9 months ago. Yeah. Oh, have you seen, you know, all these air conditioners they said work? They're all broken." And I'm like, "Great. Okay, what else? Oh, the kitchen? Yeah, you got to rip that out." I'm like, "Okay, great." So I leave the house.
Her husband's probably a contractor. So she's just like,
And then Katie comes home and she's like, "You know, after that inspection, I'm even more excited about this house." And I'm like, "Okay." So we're on slightly different pages here. I don't think she considers the money at all. She's just like, "I think with renovation, I will like living in this house. And from my perspective, I'm like, we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars more than this house is worth. And I don't even like this house. And if it just goes back to what it was worth a few months ago, I'm going to kill myself. That's what I'm thinking. But she's like, oh, what? This costs money?
She's like, what? I'll get that
There you go.
inheritance
There you go.
and the whole the baby and everything?
Yeah.
All right, well, we're not here to talk about our house in Puerto Rico. I'm sure there'll be future videos about that.
Before the show started, Pax Ghost sent us 55 NOK super chat money.
Is that now like a foreign currency, or is that a crypto? Like, do
Yeah,
we
that-
know anymore what these initials stand for? What is it? Is that like a North Korean?
Well, I'll tell you this.
What is an inox?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe from Norway.
Wouldn't that be the euro?
I don't know. I don't know.
Let us know.
Let us know what an NOK is.
And then how much? What 55 is?
So I had lunch with this guy. This guy messaged me on Facebook, and he's like, "Hey, sorry for the late notice, but I'm swinging by your neighborhood. I'm a fan of Fstoppers, and you and Patrick convinced me to move to Puerto Rico. Do you want to have lunch in 1 hour?" And you know me, I hate planning things in advance.
Yeah.
But if somebody's like, "Hey, you want to have lunch in 2 minutes?" I'm like, "Hell yeah!" So I went and had lunch with this guy, and he basically told me he started this company. I won't get into details, but he said the company is now valued at over $1 billion.
What?
Yeah. And I actually just looked it up a second ago. I have never heard of it, but apparently it's like a pretty big thing. And we started talking about crypto, and he was like, the coin of the future is mobile coin. And I'm like, what? I haven't even heard of this one.
Every billionaire has a different coin.
I don't
that's the
think this
future.
he's not a billionaire. He's
Okay.
certainly not a billionaire. His company is worth $1 billion and of capital, you
Okay.
know.
Everyone that talks about crypto has a unique coin that is the
Exactly.
future.
Yeah, so I looked up mobile coin and it seems shady, but anybody wants that free stock tip, mobile coin.
I thought it was solar. I thought that was the one.
Not solar, Solana.
That one too.
Okay.
They're all going up.
Brad Fogel gave us a super chat. He says, I really enjoyed riding this wild ride with you two and your commentary through these journal entries. Thanks for doing the series. Through the good and the bad, the journal haters can suck it. Thanks, Brad. It's not just that there are journal haters. I think YouTube is a journal hater.
Yeah.
I think YouTube, when we started, like we had this one video called The Plandemic, and we were making fun of the Plandemic documentary.
Yeah, it's like what they would want, you would think.
And that video had over 1 million. Most of these videos get like 5, 10, 15,000 views. That one had like 1.5 million views because people thought it was the Plandemic video. And when we had that video on our channel, for the last year, our YouTube views have been cut by like to 20% of their normal levels. So I went through to our normal channel, not our live one, and I unlisted everything. And then right after unlisting that video, like a day or two later, I released this video where I'm using the MacBook Pro like as a Windows user, and it now has over 300,000 views.
Yeah, but I could see where that video is also just generally more exciting, maybe.
You're right, but then there's another video that's got 30,000 views, and I would say on average recently we've been around like 10, 15. Like our numbers have been
You
horrible.
all know I'm not one for conspiracy theories.
That's true.
Well, if there's one thing we've learned over this last year and a half is like I don't buy into any of that. But one conspiracy theory I could maybe get behind is that maybe they were suppressing our channel because of that video.
That's right.
And then you got rid of it, and then you did the Apple video, and now suddenly
Thanks, Biden.
we're back.
Touche Films is in the house. He says Nutter Butter coins are the future. Man, it's been a while since I've had a Nutter Butter. All right, should we watch a COVID-related video?
Yeah, let's get to it. We are 20 minutes in and not talking about anything of importance.
We've heard this before. Health officials in the U.S. are paying close attention to what's happening in Europe right now. Coronavirus cases are rising to new levels there, despite the widespread rollout of vaccines. Nearly 2 million new cases were reported in Europe last week. That is the most in a single week in that region since the pandemic started. The situation is so bad in Austria right now, they're going back into lockdown, but only for the unvaccinated. About 2 million Austrians who haven't gotten the shot are now being told to stay home and only go out for essential trips. NBC News correspondent Claudio Luvango joins me now from Rome. So, Claudio, let's start in Austria. What's the situation there? How does this new lockdown work?
Well, this is a full lockdown, essentially, Savannah. Now, you remember that what a full lockdown looks like. Well, basically, you're allowed to go out only for the basic needs, or you need to go to the supermarket, you need to go to the pharmacy, you need to go to work, or you need to go to get that jab, that vaccination job. And that is being, essentially, all the people who haven't been vaccinated in Austria are being told to do that. Stay at home unless you really have to go out. And they're doing that to try to boost the vaccination campaign, which in Austria is stuck at a little over 60%, which is very low compared to neighboring countries such as Italy, which neighbors with Austria. Here we have a vaccination rate of about 80%, which means that most of the overall majority of the adult population is now fully vaccinated, so fully immunized. And we see that in the numbers. I mean, we do have a surge in cases here as well, but the hospitalization and the death toll is very, very low compared to other countries like Austria and other countries where the vaccination rate is not so high. But Austria is not the only country that is thinking about or has already introduced new lockdowns. The Netherlands, for instance, is having similar problems. They have introduced a partial lockdown, meaning that the public places like restaurants and bars and places like that, they will close early, at 8 o'clock in the evening, and spectators will not be allowed, at least for the time being, to go and see sporting events, once again to try to stop that fourth wave, which is affecting the whole of Europe.
So I feel like this is deja vu. This has all happened before. We've had these lockdowns. Part of me doesn't care anymore. But then I start thinking...
What do you mean you don't care?
Like, I'm just
You
like...
don't care if you're locked down? You have to stay inside?
No, I just feel like Austria is going to do this, but France isn't. And then in 6 months, France is going to do it, but Austria is wide open. Like, it just feels like it's these waves. But the difference here is, like, have we had lockdowns yet where, I don't want to say you're discriminating, but it's kind of what you're doing. You're saying those that have the vaccine can now go out and do whatever they want. But if you don't have the vaccine and you're caught outside of your house, because this is the most lockdown level that they have, you're going to be fined $1,450, $1,450 if you're not vaccinated and you're going out. It's starting to feel like more of the us and them.
Yeah.
And it's starting to feel more like what people were worried about early on when the vaccine was first announced, that the government and people are going to start, suppressing and discriminating and dividing people based on the vaccine. And that's kind of what, that's definitely what that is.
Yeah.
I don't know that, here in Puerto Rico, and I have a video in Spanish about Puerto Rico, but we've had some of the craziest lockdowns here compared to anywhere else in the United States. I think what we've dealt with here in some ways might be on par or worse than what like LA or California has had.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like that here where, I went to dinner tonight at a Mexican restaurant. Like, I had to have my vaccine card to get in. But we haven't gone to the point yet where they're like, if you're not vaccinated, you have to be locked down in your house and you can't leave. Right now, it's just kind of like...
How can they even say that? I mean, I guess you were allowed to go to the grocery store.
Well, they were saying essentials, but, remember when Walmart had aisles blocked off that weren't essential? Or we had every other day you could go based on your license plate number. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like this is our last journal here, maybe. But what's happening in 6 months if the winter really gets bad and all the government starts saying, yes, if you have the vaccine, maybe you have the third shot, you can do whatever you want. But if you don't,
it's pretty messed up.
What are people going to start doing? I mean, we saw it with the schools and the kids and all the outrage this summer of going back to school. But we haven't had it to where, like, you're telling everybody, you can't go to work, you can't leave your house, you can't do anything because you're not vaccinated. I mean, that's a different world that I don't know that we've completely experienced.
And that, I think people talk about the slippery slope and people get angry and like, oh, come on, that's ridiculous or whatever. But last year, everyone in every country was saying, we will never do vaccine passports. That goes against everything we believe in. We've never...
Your boy Cuomo was saying that,
My boy Cuomo apparently is like a rapist.
He's gone.
Yeah.
Man, he said, I'm going to leave in 2 weeks, and then I never heard anything more about
that guy's life is over, man.
Who's the governor of New York?
I don't even know.
It's just been like, let's just keep that quiet.
It's crazy. He's not my boy anymore. Here, we got a couple super chats here. Zach J says, was it the Signal CEO who's talking about mobile coin? No, but you're very, very close.
What is Signal?
So Signal is a messaging app, and I believe...
Oh, yeah, I use Signal. I don't even know what that was.
I think they are accepting or using mobile coin now or in the future or something.
Okay.
So it's somehow related to that.
I don't know if it's just here in our neighborhood or if this is part of the pandemic and everyone hating Facebook and Big Brother, but there's no less than 5 different apps People are on Discord and
know.
Signal
I
and
hate it.
WhatsApp
I
and
hate it.
Telegram, and I'm like, I can't keep up with this anymore.
I know.
And it's kind of like crypto, where they're like, get on WhatsApp because it's not monitored, and then they're like, no, that's owned by Facebook. Get on Signal, and then they're like, no, Signal's not encrypted enough. We got to move over to Telegram. And I'm just like, I can't keep up with all of these groups.
I know, it makes me very frustrated. And so what happens is I used to be super social here, and now I'm not social at all because I've had to mute all the groups because there's too much talking, or I just don't move over to the new app that everybody moves over to because I'm like, I can't do this. So yeah. Anthony says horse paste is great for anal. You put that in your mouth, didn't you?
It's anal.
Okay. Don says, guys, thanks for doing the journal. This was literally my only morale boost during the dark days of COVID. I watched every single episode. I can't wait for the next pandemic. Don't worry, I'm sure the pandemic is not over yet. Okay, so NOK is Norwegian kroner.
I would have thought that. I didn't know they had their own currency.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why he's giving it to us, because they don't.
It's
he's
worthless.
like, oh, we had that in the 90s. Give it to him.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody can send me some mobile coin or some Shiba Inu in Super Chat, but that would be awesome. So quick story, because I don't think we told everybody at home, about this crazy kid who keeps telling on me at the pool restaurant here. So, like, I always, when you put somebody in a position of authority or whatever, and they become like drunk with power,
Yeah.
and it's like, like the stewardess on the airplane who's like, everybody put your cell phones away, and you're like, why do you care?
Yeah.
Why do you care? Just walk by, even if you see me on the phone, and I know you're allowed to now, but like in the past, some of those people were Nazis about the cell phone, and now...
I was just on a fly like that. She was yelling at people for like, you need to get off your cell phone. Not to me, but I'm like, haven't you seen
Yeah, like you're allowed to do that now. But now the new one is like, masks over the nose, quit letting it droop. And I'm like, what do you care for, right? I understand if this was like a serious thing and, if somebody's nose came out, everybody on the plane's going to die, sure, yell at everybody. But you're about to walk around and give everybody refreshments, and every mask in that airplane is going to come down for the next 45 minutes. So what do you care if somebody's nose is drooped out? Just walk, like your job sucks. Don't make it suck anymore. Just go sit in your seat, and I'm going to sit in my seat in silence. Like, why start a fight, right? And I always wonder, these people that like start fights when they have these crappy jobs, I'm like, you're just making it bad for both of us, right? Like when we used to work crappy jobs.
I mean, do you think the flight attendant is totally a crappy job?
I mean,
part of me thinks like any job right now is a good job.
When they're yelling about like, get the mask over your nose, and then people are standing up fist fighting and stuff, like, yeah, that's a shitty job.
We've been on different flights, but I mean, there have been a record number of disturbances on flights lately.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But it's partly because of these weird Nazis, and I get it, like, if it's important, then do it. But if you're yelling at me to put my phone away, and then you go sit in your seat and turn your phone on, then obviously I'm not taking the plane down. So just go sit in your seat and play on your phone.
There's a bit of like hypocriticalness.
Yes. Yeah.
Hypocrisy.
Don't scream at somebody to cover their nose and then hand them a drink and tell them to remove their mask. Like, it's just pointless.
So you've been dealing with that here.
Just a little bit. So we have an outdoor restaurant here. Outdoor,
By
right?
the pool that everyone else is hanging out in.
Yeah. I go up to this bar without a mask on all the time, and I'll get like a drink or whatever. No problem. They'll give me the drink. I go up there and I'm like, maybe I even sit at a table. That's what I do. I sit at a table. And this young kid comes up who's like, he's got to be 18, 21, something in there. Like, you would think he would be like, I don't care at all about this.
I want to take your order so I can get back to my cell phone.
Yeah, or like, I just want to get this tip
Yeah.
so that I can go buy video games or what. You would think that would be his attitude.
Yeah.
But this kid is like, the first day was like, where's your vaccine card? And I didn't have my wallet on me. No problem. I've got a photo of me holding the vaccine card in my phone.
Yeah.
Right? So I show him that. And he's like, why isn't your name on the vaccine card? And I say, I know that's a little strange, but I went to a federal vaccine drive-through, and this is the way they did the card.
They told us to write our names on our card,
Yeah.
and then they would write the vaccine lot number and everything on it.
Oh, they told us to put our name on it?
Yeah,
So
my
I messed
vaccine
up?
card has my name written in my...
All right, whatever.
You just didn't write your name on it.
Okay. So the kid's like, okay, no problem. Hold on 1 second. And so I'm like, all right, he's going to give me a menu. And he comes back and he's tattletaled on me to his manager.
Yeah.
And his manager's like, what's the problem? And I'm like, there's no problem. I'm just trying to order a burger. Here's my vaccine card. And he was like, there's no name on that. And I was like, listen, man, if I want to show you a fake vaccine card, I can just go on Google Images and find one with a random name. You don't know my name. So if I pulled up a picture of one, if I was trying to fake you out right now.
Why would I use one with no name on it to begin
Right.
with?
I would just get Joe Schmo written on it, and you're not checking IDs. And he was like, we're supposed to check IDs and match it with the vaccine. And I was like, you do not do that. I've come to this restaurant a million times. I sit with people all the time. Nobody has ever been asked to show their
I think
ID.
P.F. Chang's is the only place that's actually said, I need to see your ID.
Okay,
too."
so you have actually had that happen.
Yeah, but
in
I
Puerto
just showed
Rico.
my ID today, and like they didn't check it. The vaccine card, like
Yeah.
it's never
Yeah,
happened.
because that's insane.
Yeah.
So they turned me away, and they're like, you're not allowed to eat here, sir. I'm like, this is so stupid.
Outside.
Outside. So I leave, and like a week or two, I come back again with another group of people, and I sit down. They are already eating. Or no, I was with you.
You were with me.
I was with you.
We were
You're
already
already, maybe you're done eating.
Yeah.
So like, the vaccine check has already happened.
Yeah.
So if normally it's not going to happen again, right? That's just to like be seated.
Yeah.
So I sit down. It's the same kid, right? And so I'm like, oh, hey, it's you. So I pull out my vaccine card because I feel like I'm going to show him. You see? Because they thought that I was lying. They thought that I had a fake vaccine card.
But you're just so dumb. You brought out the fake vaccine card again to the same kid.
Well, the first time it was a photo.
Okay.
And this time it was the real card.
Oh, you had the physical. Okay.
Yeah, I had the real card.
Yeah.
And I'm like, see? I'm not lying to you.
This is it.
Yeah, this is it. And he was like, cool, what do you want to eat? And I told him what I wanted to eat. He goes back on and tattletales on me to another manager. I think this time he told the owner of the restaurant.
Yeah.
And
So
then she comes out. And she's like, what's the problem? And I'm like, there is no problem. I have been vaccinated. I have video footage of me being vaccinated. Like we did a whole episode on me being vaccinated. This is the card that the federal agent gave me, exactly how they handed it to me. I have not touched it since the day they gave it to me. If I wanted to lie to you, then I would just write any name on this. And she was like, we have to match it with an ID. And I'm like, no, you don't. And then
Well, before she said that, she was like, I need you to write your name on it. And you're like, give me a pen. And it was just this weird like...
But I think before that, she was like, I have to match it against an ID. And I said, no, you don't. There's no way that you asked anyone at these tables for their ID. And you were like, you didn't ask me for ID.
Because she didn't. She was trying to say, this is what the procedure is. And I'm like, you didn't
I know.
ID us.
And I feel like I'm being like this Karen and I'm throwing a fit at a restaurant. Like I don't want to be that person.
You don't want to talk about it at all.
No, I don't want to talk about it at all. And I actually have been vaccinated. I'm not trying to pull a fast one. I'm not trying to have fake vaccine cards. Like I legit have one and I have it right in front of us here. And then the idea that like, well, if you sign it right now in front of me, that makes it real all of a sudden. Like let's say it is fake, but you hand me a pen and I write my name on it. Now it's real. Like it's just crazy. But really what I'm mad about is this 18-year-old kid that I'm like, what do you care about this for? Why do you keep tattletaling on me?
It got passed on to both the managers and maybe the owner now too. Hopefully she's not watching. But it's like they're incapable of taking a situation and thinking logically through it and saying there are rules, and if rules are broken, there's fines. But in this case, one, no one's going to find out about this, and two, your story makes sense. I shouldn't hold you to like the rule Because the interpretation of it all, it's like, okay.
But I also don't think the rule says you have to check the vaccine card and compare it against an ID card. I mean, it doesn't even make sense because a lot of children are vaccinated and they don't have IDs.
Yeah.
Right?
So what do you do with all the, there's a big debate in our country about, like, do we need a national ID card, or people come over the borders without ID cards?
Yeah.
We can't have ID cards to vote and everything. But in this case, you're saying you need the ID card to have the vaccine passport validated.
Yeah. And then one of the managers, like the first time I was turned away from eating at the restaurant, he was like, you have to pay for this app, and then the app will verify if your vaccine card is real or not. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, this is getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm trying to eat outside some French fries. This is crazy. I'm not even near another person,
But she was just like, I'm just so worried that if I don't follow the rules, that I will get fined and they'll shut down my restaurant. And I'm like, I understand your concern. Like, nobody wants that. But there's nobody here. There's not like agents jumping out of the bushes who are going to...
We're the only people eating
here
today.
There's like poker groups going on that have catering, and it's all done like it's not supposed to be... nobody's coming after you because you bought some French fries outdoors and you had a vaccine card that you didn't write your name on it.
Right.
Because I pulled out my card and I was like, look, the same date, different batch numbers, but I wrote my name. That's my signature. And she was like, it's not about what's right. It's about what you haven't done, or something. I'm like, I don't know. It is the Subway story all over again.
Oh my gosh. And then that same day, we were in the pool with you and Kristen.
We can't even get into this. This is like...
I think she was like, Kristen was like, Lee, you are the problem in the situation. This is just like the selfie combo, and we don't need to explain all that to all the new people, but I'm like, yes, it is exactly like that. And she was like, yeah, Subway was in the right, you're in the wrong. And I'm like, you're out of your mind. You are out of your mind.
Well,
so
maybe we should move on.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there's lots more stories
coronavirus
like this. So this is the idea that the vaccine, the definition of being fully vaccinated,
is changing.
It could be maybe.
Well, other news now. The definition of what it means to be fully vaccinated against COVID could change in the future.
The CDC director said today that they may need to update that definition to include a booster shot. Run 4's Amanda Harry has reaction from infectious disease experts and when all of this could take effect.
With booster shots against COVID-19 becoming increasingly available, the director of the CDC says they could change the definition of fully vaccinated to include a booster. According to the CDC website, about 57% of people in the U.S. meet the current definition of fully vaccinated, and only 6% have received a booster.
I think the announcement came a little bit prematurely, to tell you the truth.
I was surprised to hear that because the FDA and the CDC ACIP, which is really our main advisory committee for vaccinations, are not at all convinced that everyone needs a third shot.
Local infectious disease experts agree that this announcement was unexpected. Dr. Peter Chin Hong says he believes the booster dose could move the vaccines from preventing serious illness, hospitalization, and death to preventing contraction of the disease altogether.
But with the rollout of the boosters, it seems that our strategy now is to use it as a way to prevent transmission of infection from one person to the next.
Right now, boosters are recommended for those over 65, immunocompromised, and people in high-risk environments. With more than 30% of the country completely unvaccinated, Dr. Chin Hong thinks they need to be the main focus.
The reason why I'm worried is because we have enough difficulty getting millions of Americans to get their first shot.
Dr. Chin Hong says the science is always changing, but changing this definition of fully vaccinated could be confusing to people, and Dr. Monica Gandhi agrees.
It will erode trust in the vaccines even further, and I really want us to feel confident in these vaccines.
Dr. Gandhi says she doesn't see the definition change happening anytime soon.
Luckily, we have multiple layers, just like in government, for checks and balances, and we have multiple organizations that are responsible.
Amanda Harry, Cron 4 News.
I think she's going to have to eat her words soon. She's like, I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. It's probably going to change come February.
And it just feels like so much of the stuff we're like making up as we go when we don't really know what the right thing is, and then we change our definition very quickly after we change it the first time. And one video that we should have gotten today, it's my mistake for doing nothing, is Ron Paul going after Fauci, or is it Rand Paul?
Rand Paul.
Rand Paul going after Fauci.
That story, I'm sure there's a lot of nuances in between the cracks. But, there's been so many people that have said, you called me a conspiracy theory when I said this, 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 and this, and this. And then it's like, this, and this happened.
Yeah.
It kind of became true.
Yeah.
And that, you watch it and you're like, dude, Rand Paul Rand Paul is insane, but Fauci, I kind of feel like, is a little insane too. And now we're getting to this point where I didn't see the latest cry out, but weren't there emails and stuff coming out that said that like what he did was actually gain of function for certain?
Yeah, I think
that's what the debate's all around.
My minimal understanding is that basically Fauci is now kind of playing with words and definitions, and they were doing gain of function, but then on NIH's website or whatever, they simply changed the definition of gain of function so that he can continue to say, we did not do that. And Rand Paul, in his berate, said, I'm not saying this created the coronavirus,
right,
but I'm saying that you have been doing this. It's incredibly dangerous, and it could have created something like the coronavirus, or maybe it did. I don't know.
But you're also now doubling down that that's not what you were doing.
Right.
I'm not saying this caused this, but you're saying you weren't even doing anything that could ever make that connection.
But then there was some big email or organization or whatever that came out and said, actually, we have been funding gain of function research. And then there's something about like killing little beagle puppies with sand flies or something. You see this?
I did like weeks ago.
What the hell?
Yeah.
So weird. Man, I just binged Tiger King season 2.
I read something that said it was really horrible, but
so it's totally different. Obviously, the Tiger King's just in jail. So
and then Carol Baskin's like isn't part of it, right? Because she pissed off that they portrayed her in a bad light.
So without really giving anything away, this whole season, it's just 5 episodes, so it's not that hard to watch it, is all about, did she kill her husband? And is the Tiger King actually guilty of trying to have her killed? Did he hire a hitman to have her killed?
Okay.
I won't reveal what happened, but they do a good job. Like, they do some crazy investigative journalism in this documentary. So.
I tell you about last February, I got a massage in Charleston, and I got done early, and Kristen was still getting something done there, and I started talking to the receptionist, and she's like, oh, I'm from Utah. I'm like, what did you move to Charleston for from Utah? And she's like, oh, have you seen The Lion King? And I'm like, Tiger King. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, well, I moved out here to start a big cat rescue. And I'm like, please tell me more. So for 10 minutes, I talked to this girl about how, and I tried to keep a straight face because I can't be like, this sounds batshit crazy. But she's starting, maybe it's open now, up in Somerville. They like had bought all this land, and I asked her if she knew the guy from, what was the guy from Myrtle Beach, the ponytail?
Oh, yeah. He wasn't in this one.
He's not in this one?
They got new Tiger Kings in this one.
I think that guy went to prison for some kind of like sexual thing.
All going to prison, man. There's new tiger people in this one, and they're going to prison. And their lions are getting taken away from them. Like, it's so weird.
I wonder if the girl from the massage parlor is in prison now. Because she was starting one up there. I'm like, this is so weird.
It is so weird. And the funny thing is that every single one of them is like, all these big cat people, they're insane. Every last one of them. Something's wrong with them.
Yeah.
And they just admit it. Like, yeah, something's wrong with me, but I love these cats. You ain't taking my cats. All right. Next up.
Speaking of animals, go to...
Oh, deer?
Yeah. Have you heard this?
I don't think so.
So a new study shows deer are spreading COVID-19.
Yeah, Penn State researchers looked into data collected from harvested deer in Iowa. Those deer were being tested for chronic wasting disease, but they were also checked for COVID-19.
Matter of fact, 80% of them had the virus ahead of hunting season. WAT6 on your side reporter Kirsty Croft.
80%?
80% of the deer have COVID.
How is that possible?
And it's like, remember we had like a lion?
They're currently contagious, or they had it?
I don't know if they've said contagious, but they said they have...
Like, they actively...
They don't have antibodies. They have the active form of the virus.
Like, how is that even possible, that it could be so high all at one moment?
And then what happened in the Bronx Zoo a year ago? Did that cat get the other... Like, there's so much we don't know.
What the hell? Looks into whether there is a real concern of transmission.
Terry Lewis has been deer hunting for 45 years, and that's not changing this year.
We are. Already been a couple times muzzleloader hunting.
The possibility of the deer he hunts having COVID-19 doesn't worry him.
Not really. We try to take as many precautions as whether COVID is an issue or not, we always wear rubber gloves and wash our hands and wash our tools when we harvest an animal.
Deer having COVID-19 isn't out of the question. 2 studies showed deer in 4 states had COVID-19, but not in Tennessee. The most recent study out of Penn State focused on deer in Iowa. The data proves the animals were actively infected.
And so they looked at lymph nodes in deer that had been hunter-harvested harvested and found that a pretty large percentage of them were positive by PCR, which is showing that they actually had the virus in them, as opposed to the antibodies, which show that they've been exposed at some point.
What does that mean for hunters? Dr. Marcy Souza with UT's College of Veterinary Medicine says nothing for now.
So I think the studies that have come out have actually raised more questions than provided answers. At this point, there's really no evidence that hunters can get SARS-CoV-2 from handling an animal if they've hunted.
Even though there's no evidence about COVID passing from deer to humans, there is proof hunters can catch other diseases from game. So taking certain safety precautions is still important.
Caution is the best thing. Wear rubber gloves, protect yourself against not only COVID, but any other things that might come around.
Dude, I mean, if I was one of these Looney Tunes that was skeptical of whether this virus was real or what, how people are like, they made the test so that everyone tests positive, but it doesn't even exist. But then I saw stuff like this, I would be like, you see? Do we have record deer deaths? Are deer just walking down the street and dying of COVID? Or does it not even matter, What are these tests we're giving deer? 80% of them all at once have COVID? That doesn't seem possible.
I don't know if I follow. You're saying with 80% of them having COVID that there should be a huge deer problem, they're all dying?
Or you would think that if deer can get over COVID as quickly as we can in a couple weeks, how is it possible that 80% of them all have it at the same time? And if they do have it all at the same time, if we checked 2 weeks from now, would only 5% of them have it?
I don't know.
Because they would have herd immunity? That just seems like...
Well, when I heard this story, literally 5 hours ago, I feel like my mind instantly went to, she said there's really no evidence that this could be contagious to humans. It made me just think of the whole, zoonotic spread of the disease. How do we know for certain that deer can't give it to us, but yet we think the pangolin transmitted it to us through the bat? It just seems like, if no one's getting it from the deer and we're cutting up the deer meat and eating it just like they're doing with the bats, maybe the bats, well, is it the bats or the pangolins that they're eating? They're eating the bats, right?
Yeah, who eats pangolin?
I don't know.
I think they eat that too.
Well, all I'm saying is we dismiss, or they're dismissing the deer as potentially spreading the virus, but 50%
I don't know
of the
about
idea,
that. They said handling the meat. Oh, I see what you're saying. You weren't making out with the bat. You were eating the bat and somehow.
Yeah, you're cutting and preparing, and in the wet market and all that whole story, which we still are not even sure if that's even the real way that it spread.
Yeah.
But then here we see it in all of these other animals, and then you could get really crazy with it and be like, well, if it's spreading to all these animals, because I think it's not just deer. I think there's dogs. And we knew big cats got it last year.
Yeah, they mentioned that in Tiger King. They were like, yeah, you got to watch out because all these tigers can get COVID.
Yeah, and it just makes you wonder, if we had a hand in this, we as the human race, we've been tinkering with science and nature, and this isn't just a simple leap, but there's actually something going wrong in a lab. Where you can see where this could be the end of all humanity, all life. If now, what if this was super detrimental for a certain animal?
I know.
It's not that bad for us, it doesn't seem like, but what if all of a sudden the deer, obviously 80% of the deer have it, but they're not falling down dead all over the place.
Yeah.
But what if we found out the turtles got it, or the bees got it, or any number of insects or animals?
Yeah.
Maybe only mammals can get this virus. I don't know, but it just feels like people complain about messing with the food webs and the food pyramids.
Yeah.
But what if COVID now could not just disrupt our food chains and our transportation systems, but it's literally disrupting our food.
Let's hope that mosquitoes are catching and dying in droves of COVID-19.
I think they're getting COVID and they're biting us and giving it to us. That's
All right.
what's happening.
Here's some good news.
Whether you're filling your tank, stocking up at the grocery store,
and are you guys paying the other separate?
Or dining out, the cost for just about everything is trending higher. The Consumer Price Index spiking 6.2% for October, the largest inflation surge in more than 3 decades.
The gas prices are bananas.
I don't eat much steak anymore either. Everything's more expensive. Everything across the board.
Just in the past year, a gallon of milk has climbed 28 cents, a pound of ground beef up 66 cents, while gas prices have soared more than $1, reaching levels we haven't seen since 2014. Used cars are also up 26% at auto shops nationwide. The supply chain crisis is making it tough to order parts.
So parts, most of them are available if you're willing to wait, But everything, it used to be we could get cars in and out in a day. Now it's sometimes a week.
A week, or even longer.
Or even longer. Yeah, absolutely.
From auto parts to toy stores, discounts this season may be hard to come by. And you'll pay more if you're traveling over the holidays. For Thanksgiving, up 23% over last year, $300 round trip on average. If you wait till Christmas week, $511 round trip. The good news, airfares are still lower than they were before the pandemic, but across the country, millions of people have now left the workforce.
The economy is reopening, and employers are scrambling for workers, and they're having to pay more money to workers. What they're doing is they're passing along those higher costs in their prices.
That's creating a dilemma for some businesses. Cole Rusich manages Post Oak Barbecue in Denver.
Brisket pricing that I get now changes, I would say, almost weekly.
So far, they've avoided passing on the cost to their customers.
And I'm not going to change the brisket sign out there to say market price like it's seafood. We just keep it what it is, and some weeks it's a lower margin, and some weeks it's a higher one.
Yeah, the trouble is, a lot of these businesses, especially small businesses, they simply can't afford to eat that cost. They have to pass it on to the consumer, they have to pass it on to you and me, and that means everything is just getting more expensive. Hoda, back to you.
All right, Tom.
6% in October.
That's crazy.
What do you think it is for the year? I mean, is it like, because normally what is it? Is it 2% a year is the average?
I think that's what their maximum goal has been. Like, they don't want to go over that, but we haven't hit 2% in a long time, apparently.
So we hit 6% in just the last month. But like, it's weird because I remember.
Is that what it means? Or I think we're 6% higher than last October, I believe.
Is that what it is? Year to a date?
I'm pretty sure.
So then that's not. I don't say something.
I mean, it's still insane. It's still crazy.
I just remember listening to all these podcasts, financial podcasts that are way over my head, and I just listened to them trying to like understand a little bit more as you listen to it and listen to it and listen to it. And all last year, I mean, every one of these guys was like, inflation's coming, and that would be the argument for gold, buying gold. And I don't know if that's really panned out, but it hasn't panned out.
No.
But everyone was like, hyperinflation or non-transitory inflation is coming, it's coming, and it was just like a broken record.
Yeah.
And my hedge on it was, let me take out some money on my house and get a mortgage on my home in Charleston. And then if the prices of everything go up, suddenly your mortgage seems a lot smaller because the value of the house has exploded. That was the one little move that I did. But now here we are in November, and everyone's talking about it. Everyone's complaining about gas. The price of meat's crazy. I'm seeing places where like shelves are empty. Container ships are crazy. Shipping's crazy. Like, people are talking about like this is going to be a weird Christmas. Like maybe there's not enough gifts to give people.
You can't get a PS5 anywhere, man.
Car prices. I just tried to rent a rental car. It was near impossible to get a rental car.
That's
And if you've rented a car in the last year, how much did rental cars used to cost like 3 years ago?
Dude, in Puerto Rico, we were getting cars for under $20 a day.
In the States, is it like $40 a day?
Maybe. You could get it for less than that.
I don't think you can get a rental car for less than $100 a day. $100 a day.
I've seen, when we were in Orlando, it was $300 a day for a little Toyota.
And a lot of that is because they sold all their inventory.
Yeah.
No, like there's other things going on besides, there's other causes for the inflation than just inflation itself. They have low inventory and all this sort of thing. I mean, they're all work hand in hand, but it's crazy.
I know.
And then you're seeing the home prices, and it just makes me wonder. I don't know enough about inflation. We haven't lived in a period of high inflation, but my gut feeling is prices don't just suddenly go. We've seen this with gas. Gas goes up and down.
Yeah.
They said 2014. It's not that long ago. But if you have a house that's worth $1 million now that was worth $300,000 10 years ago, is that house just going to plummet back down and be what it was worth 10 or 15 years ago? Or is it going to keep going up, but it does little waves and little, step up?
I don't know. I think historically, when asset prices go up rapidly, they come down rapidly, and vice versa. I think you could say we had the fastest bear market in history at the beginning of COVID.
Yep.
And now we've had the fastest rebound in history. And I certainly believe that it is going to be so bad when this next recession hits. But obviously, in hindsight, it's the worst decision ever by not being in the market.
Are we not in a recession? I mean, technically speaking, we aren't. But is the economy doing well?
It's so weird, you listen to like I see you've got a video of Peter Schiff here, who's a perma bear. Like no matter what happens, he's going to figure out a way to spin it and say it's horrible. But then, you listen to a lot of the people on MSNBC Money or whatever, and it's like they're always perma bulls. It's like no matter what, we can spin this in this great way, but like unemployment is incredibly low right now. I think we're in like the 4% area.
Can't be true though.
I'm
You literally walk around. I wanted to do a photo series. I just was too lazy to do it. Of just like every place has a for hire sign.
But that's a good sign though. That like if you are somebody looking for a job, there's incredible opportunity right now. Whereas certainly during COVID, everybody's getting laid off.
But does that mean there are so many jobs in America that we literally do not have enough people to fill those positions? Where like 3 years ago or just before the pandemic, you know, it wasn't the case?
Dude, everybody got paid to not work. They invested in Shiba Inu, and now they're crypto rich, and they're like, I'm not working for minimum wage anymore. And so
I feel like that's a narrative. I just don't know anybody. I mean, I do know some people, but they were already rich. I don't know many people that have put so much money into crypto and watched it balloon. I mean, it hasn't gone that high. Even if you're 10x, the chances of you putting in thousands or tens of thousands of dollars and 10xing that and not needing to work, it's like you put in $1,000 and now you have $10,000, but in those 10 months, you've spent all of that money because you haven't had a job. You know, like the math just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't see how people can just put their money in crypto at those amounts, you know. Obviously, if you have $100,000 to put into crypto and it works out well for you, then like maybe you could go a year or two without having to work. But, you know, I talk to people and it's like, my $100, it turned into $300. And I'm like, okay, that's awesome. But you're not doing anything with $300, you know. Yeah. You still need a job.
We got a super chat here. How do you pronounce this?
The Foshin man?
Foshin? With a Shiba sticker. Thank you. Yeah, a Bored Ape cost $250, now worth $220,000 for these stupid ass NFTs. Yeah, I just feel like we will look back. I mean, when we were alive, we weren't really in the markets, but you know, we kind of got the vibe for what was happening during the dot-com boom in 2000 and stuff.
I had no idea what that was. I still don't.
I knew a little bit.
It just seemed like you came up with a domain name, or did you have an actual
You might have
portal?
a website. It was just this idea that like, oh my gosh, think of, you know, if you're competing to make sales, but now you don't have to have a storefront and you can reach the world and it's open 24 hours a day, you're going to be so rich. Like basically just come up with any idea and put it online and you're going to be so rich and you're going to get all these investors and it's not going to be a problem.
What's the top one? It's like pets.com?
Pet.com or whatever, and I think maybe Linux was going crazy back then too, but just, I was reading an interesting thread on Reddit where people were talking about what it was like working in that industry, and they were like, so much money was everyone was rich. Everyone was rich. You'd have any idea, you could just be like, hey, I need $1 million to do this, you'd have it. Everybody was the same stuff that people are saying now, like the world has changed, it can't go down. You know, the market used to be able to go down, but the reason it can't go down now is because XYZ or because the Fed will just print money or whatever. Yep. Like the housing market can't go down because, you know, it doesn't do that. Just because the market goes down doesn't mean the house, whatever. And he was like, and then it went down, and it went down so fast. And all of my friends who were all in these, you know, internet websites or whatever, all of them were fired. And he was saying it was crazy. So it's going to happen. And I think when we look back at it and we see how much money people are wasting on JPEG images of cartoons.
I didn't take a video of this. I don't even know if there is a video of it. But did you see that there is a lawsuit between, is it Miramax and Tarantino, because Quentin Tarantino is making a Pulp Fiction NFT, and I don't exactly know what that even means.
Yeah, what does that mean?
NFTs make no, I mean, I don't want to say they make no sense to me. I can see a use case for NFTs, but 99% of the stuff I see, there's no use case. Like, what is it? You have like a virtual copy of Pulp Fiction? And they were suing him because it was like intellectual property, like he was infringing on their copyright, which is really ironic.
Who was suing?
The studio.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Like, Tarantino doesn't have the rights to 100% of that movie.
No, and so from that angle, it makes sense, but it's also ironic because he is the sole creator and the idea behind, you know, it's like, It's
they
like,
paid him to do it,
It's
though.
like Paul McCartney writing a song and it becoming super famous, but then Michael Jackson buying the rights to that song, and it's like contractually, legally, Michael Jackson owns the Beatles songs, but it's like without Paul McCartney writing it, he's the one. It's a weird world, but then you put the NFT layer on top of it, and it's so silly. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, man, are people they're just making money? Quentin Tarantino's just like, poof, I'll just make up nothing.
Do you know what it sold for?
I don't even know that I don't know if it's even been offered yet, or
okay.
he's hinting that it will be offered, or he was going to put it up for auction. Something was working its way out, but now he's being sued over it, I guess.
All right, let's move on here. We got to wrap this up.
One thing you are not going to see us do is what MSNBC Stephanie Ruhle did, which is basically say, actually, inflation is totally fine, and these people, they have plenty of money anyways. Let's take a listen.
And the dirty little secret here, Willie, while nobody likes to pay more, on average, we have the money to do so. Household savings hit a record high over the pandemic. We didn't really have anywhere to go out and spend. And as we said a moment ago, we're expecting retail sales this holiday season to break records. For those who own their homes, the value of our homes are up. And while the stock market isn't the economy, you got over half of American households with some investment in the markets, and the markets have hit record highs. So we need to put all of this in perspective. This time last year, when you and I were talking, Willie, nobody had a vaccine. Now 200 million Americans do, and we're seeing this push of demand, and that's pushing up pricing.
There it is. It's the final take of, actually, it's completely fine. No, it's not fine. You can both acknowledge household savings are high. You can acknowledge that record demand is there because we had a pandemic and people were inside and their consumption habits have dramatically changed. And you can also say, as we repeatedly, that ordinary people are getting slammed by gas prices, food prices, and more. So trying to go out there and justify it, I saw an NBC News op-ed basically say the exact same thing. They were like, actually, inflation is good. It's like, okay, everyone calm down.
Well,
that nothing is good about people having to pay more for ordinary goods.
Right. Have you heard this argument?
No, I've not heard that argument.
People are saying that, like, I think she went on to say this, or this was the news story a few days ago, that, like, rich people are the ones that are hurt the most by inflation because they're the ones buying all of this stuff. And it's like, but if you look at, did you ever read the book about the flat tax? There's, like, a book that's, like, it's, like, trying to make this argument.
Fair tax.
Fair tax. And it's the idea that you tax those things that
Consumption.
you consume, which I think the video I have with Peter Schiff, he's going to argue this. He argues it in a different way that makes sense on one level but not on the other. But the whole idea was that rich people spend all this money and they're the ones that are eating all the inflation costs. But if you think gas and food and housing are some of the things that have inflated the most, and that makes up the largest percentage of those that are in poverty, if you're in poverty or maybe you're just in the middle class, 50% of your money, maybe more, goes to your housing, goes to your food, goes to your gas and transportation. If those things are now inflated and your wage didn't go up because of it, then you're getting hit harder, maybe not on a dollar amount, but in a percentage of your net income. You're getting hit harder with inflation than anybody who's got money,
Well, let's see what he has to say.
So this video, to warn you, is a little long.
Oh, I thought the other ones are kind
But
of
I
long.
thought this was really interesting. So
Okay.
you can pause it at any time.
And it appears there is yet to be a reprieve from rising inflation in the United States. As supply chains remain strained as the nation's economy attempts to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, producer prices rose 8.6% in October compared to the year prior, according to data released Tuesday by the Labor Department. Rising gasoline prices were a major contributing factor as the producer price index saw a 0.6% increase from September. Now, while the producer price index measures prices before they hit the public, the Labor Department will release data Wednesday on the consumer price index, with analysts expecting a 0.5% rise from September and a jump of more than 5.5% year over year.
Pause it. So he answered the question that I was asking. Is the inflation for producers, he said, increased 8% year over year. So that is the full year. But that the consumer side of it has only grown 6%. So that leaves a 2% gap in there where it sounds like, and I think Peter's going to talk about this a little bit, but it sounds like the producers have just eaten that 2% cost and say, we're going to take that on our bottom end, but we're not going to pass it on yet.
Yeah.
So what does this new data tell us? As it appears inflation is here to stay for the time being, despite the Fed's claims that it's simply transitory. Well, joining us now to discuss is Peter Schiff, Chief Economist and Global Strategist with Euro Pacific Capital. Peter, always a pleasure to have you on. In a note on Sunday, Goldman Sachs actually warned inflation will get worse before it gets better as we continue to see supply issues coupled with rising energy prices. Do you consider that a valid claim, consider these latest numbers?
There's an interesting debate between Peter Schiff and who's the guy who just moved to our neighborhood here? I think he's got like a Batman name. Is it Harvey Dent or something like this?
Okay.
It might be Harvey Dent. But he believes that there will be deflation because they both believe the markets and everything is going to crash. There's going to be a massive slowing of the growth of the economy, maybe even a reverse.
Depression or
yeah. But Peter Schiff is like, inflation will continue, the dollar will continue to go down in price, and the cost of things will go up, causing people to buy less. But this Harvey guy believes that because people will buy less, the price for things will go down, causing deflation. And
doesn't it depend on how you look at it? It's deflation of the asset prices, but you can also have deflation of the dollar, right? Maybe Peter is saying the dollar's going to deflate, but the prices are going to inflate. So it's like you can throw, I think, this is how good we are with the economics. Deflation can be applied to like different pieces in the puzzle, right?
Well, I think specifically they're talking about the value of the dollar. What can the dollar buy you today, and will it be able to buy you more or less tomorrow? Peter says way less. Harvey, if that's his name, says more.
More.
We'll see.
Well, I think they're half right. I think it's going to get worse before it gets much worse.
Please elaborate, Peter.
Well, I mean, the inflation pipeline is pretty full. In fact, if you look at the PPI numbers that came out today, in the first 10 months of the year, producer prices are up 8.3%. Annualize that for the full year, and that's 10% increase, which is quite a bit larger, I think. Consumer prices are up maybe about 6% during the same time period. So that means companies are absorbing a lot of the price increases, and I think they've been reluctant to pass them on because they've been hoping that the Fed was right and that the inflation is transitory. But I think as they realize that the Fed was wrong and that inflation is here to stay, not only are they going to be passing on the rate or the price increases next year, but they're going to pass on this year's increases that they have been holding off on. So I think we're going to get a double barrel in 2022, which means that consumer prices are going to move up a lot more next year than they did this year.
And Peter, it seems like the goalposts keep getting moved when it comes to the transitory inflation relief, if you will. The Fed obviously took steps last week to roll back some of its QE and other easy monetary policy, but will that really have any effect on the pressures that we're feeling now, or is that all too little too late?
Well, first of all, they're still doing quantitative easing, even if they're doing slightly less of it. And of course, this is just temporary. They're going to back up the truck and do even more QE because they just passed the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. You've got another one that's even larger, Build Back Better, whatever they're calling it. That one is going to pass. So where's all the money going to come from to pay for all this government spending? They're not getting it from higher taxes, so they're going to get it all from the Fed. And the Fed is going to have to expand its asset purchase program to buy up all these bonds that are going to be sold to finance all this spending.
And the White House, you make some interesting points about what the administration is doing here, because the White House has made meager attempts to rein in the rising costs for Americans. And one of the big aspects here has been rising fuel costs. So they've even called on OPEC to increase oil output to stabilize rising gas prices in the U.S. But on the other hand, their message tends to be that the economy recovered too fast, is just doing too well. And that's why we're having all of this crazy inflation. What do you make of that comment?
Yeah, first of all, they want OPEC to produce more, but they want domestic oil and gas companies to produce less. We need to produce our own oil, not beg the OPEC nations to produce more. But you're absolutely right on the whole concept of inflation. And the idea that it's somehow the price we pay for prosperity, this is nonsense. I mean, governments have been trying to rationalize and blame the public for inflation, for decades. It's not about the economy being too strong. It's actually about the economy being too weak. And because the economy is so weak, we're printing all this money. And that is the source of the problem. We're producing money, not stuff. And so the price of the stuff is going up. Meanwhile, we are importing record amounts of stuff. We have never imported more products than we're importing right now. But despite this surge in imports, prices are still going up because the economy is so weak that we can't produce enough even to fill that gap with record imports.
I just don't know. I listen to Peter's podcast every time he does one. And he loves to say, the economy is so weak, it's so weak, it's so weak. And his main thesis is it's weak because we aren't producing enough. And we're basically just buying all of the production from overseas. And all of these boats, are coming over from China. They can't even get in because we're trying to buy it so fast. But then they're going back empty because we don't even have anything to give China. And I do understand that, but that also, I'm not sure that totally sounds like a weak economy. Like, what if, for example, in China they make a lot of hard goods that we want to buy, but maybe in America we're making lots of digital products that don't require ships. I don't know. But I'm just not...
Or you look at Apple. Apple's found that it's more profitable to make their stuff in China and ship it over to the world.
Yeah, but Apple is the world's most valuable company.
Right. Tesla's another good example. I mean, Tesla's making stuff in both markets, but
is there more to this?
That's the. I watched the rest of it. I didn't want to put it all in there, but it does feel like one way out of this is just to print more money. And this is what a lot of the podcasts that I was listening to a year ago was kind of hinting at, is that if we don't find ourselves in serious trouble after printing the most amount of dollars in the history of America, then how are legislators ever going to be like, we went too far and we have to pull back now, when they can just say, it worked the last year, it worked 2 years, it worked under Trump, it worked under Biden, maybe some new president's going to be president in a few years if we're still at this stage. And it's like, how do you roll that back and say, like, that is not the answer? Because eventually it does seem to catch up with you, you know?
Well, I saw this speech by Rand Paul, and I didn't see the date on it. I would imagine it was kind of in the heart of the coronavirus thing. But it's a really good speech. And he was like, if we sign this spending bill...
Ron or Rand?
I think Rand.
Okay, his son.
He was like, if we sign this, every Republican that puts their name on this, you will never have credibility again against the Democrats for spending too much and the deficit being too big or whatever. Like, this goes against everything that we say we stand for when it comes to fiscal responsibility, you know, and keeping the dollar valuable and, you know, not incentivizing people to sit home and not work. Like, this goes against everything. But all of you are signing this right now. And I think this was under Trump.
Yeah.
And now, you know, we just signed another one that's even for more. It's crazy.
Well, that was the problem I always had with Trump, was saying, you know, he's a Republican and Republicans like to curb spending and they like to save more and like lower taxes, but we're going to spend less and it all works out. But I'm like, Trump spent more money and he reduced taxes. Like, that's like the worst thing you could do. You have to do one or the other.
Or if, I mean, obviously the inflation right now is really bad. If it continues like this, I think this will crash the economy. Because what everybody's saying, Peter Schiff, his main thesis is, we're going to have inflation that's going to get hotter and hotter and hotter. You know how Bernie Sanders is saying, we need $15 minimum wage, whatever. $15 minimum wage will be nothing when this inflation becomes over with. So
we need $30 an hour.
They're going to have to raise interest rates. And when they raise interest rates, that's going to crash our economy. And it's going to crash the world economy. And it's all going to be because of these decisions that we've made over the last few years, but especially in the last 2 years or whatever. But that's really what's going, the catalyst that's going to, you know, throw us into this horrific economy.
One strange thing I've been reading about, and maybe, did my sister tell me this too? One thing that's going on, or seems to be going on in the job market, and maybe this isn't a huge issue, but like I've heard it and read it enough to where there's something to it, is that people that are getting hired from companies now with inflation are getting paid significantly more today than new hires 6 months ago or a year ago. And so you have people who have been working for a company almost for a year that are making $10,000 less than what the new hires that have no training are making. Just because the demand is so crazy. Like, people are like, I'm not going to work for less than this.
Yeah.
Or there's been this idea that the best thing you could do for your career is to find a new job every 2 or 3 years, right? Because once you get into this position, you only get a raise that's like a few percentage points every year. But you can get a huge raise if you get a new job and find a new company. You know, that's why so many people in Silicon Valley work for Microsoft, and then they jump to Apple, and then they move to Uber. And like, they change companies because they get these huge pay increases. But this has been happening with very standardized jobs, less paying jobs, where you take a job for 50 grand or 80 grand, and then maybe you took that last December, and then now all of a sudden there's new hires that are coming in for 10, 15 grand more than what you've made, and you're almost the senior worker there, for, you know?
I would think that's a good negotiation you have there. Like, hey, just pay me
But can
more.
a company allow every employee, like, companies...
That's what inflation is. I mean, that's it just hasn't happened yet. You know, we're seeing it with cars, and maybe that is low inventory, so maybe you can't say that's all inflation or whatever. But yeah, it's when all the cost of food goes up, and then the person who's buying the food is like, well, I've got a rental property, I better raise that price, and then that goes up. And then the person who needs to get the job to pay for that rent goes to work for you, and you say, hey, I'll pay you this much, and they go, I literally cannot pay my bills for that.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, I guess I have to raise what I'm paying my employees. And then we go on Fstoppers and we go, okay, we got to raise the price of our tutorials, and we got to raise the price.
I was thinking about that today. I was like, we've never raise the price of our tutorials. We always
Mhm.
like lower them over time.
Well,
but I'm
and-
like, I feel like should we be raising the prices of these things?
Well, the funny thing is like the first tutorial we ever made was 4 hours long, and
Yeah.
it was $300.
Yeah.
Now we're making 20-hour-long tutorials and selling them for $300.
Yeah.
So that's
The opposite of
yeah,
it.
that's deflationary.
I've noticed this though
Or is
with
that inflationary? I don't know.
It's yeah. I've noticed this with going to Home Depot here, you know. It's like you keep arguing that like you paid what to have a guy install a light switch? I'm like, yeah, it's like $200. And you're like, that's insanity. Everyone wants to work for $100 an hour now. And I'm like, you go to Lowe's, you go to Home Depot and buy a rocker switch? You even know how much that cost?
Well, somebody just told me the fancy rocker switches should cost $2.50.
$2.50.
That's what the guy told me today. Is that not the case?
A brand name rocker switch is between $35 and $60. $60.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
He just pulled it up on his phone. And he was like, "This one has 3, and this is going to be like $2.50 for this
Are
one."
you talking about the one that's got the little skinny rockers?
Like the light switches that are in this house. Is that what you're talking about?
Legrand or a name brand one. Like if you want the Diva switch or you want the...
What do these switches do?
Like the ones where you touch it and the LED goes up and the lights get brighter.
I don't think he was showing those.
Okay, yeah. Like I went to the hardware store over here and you can find rocker... I bought like 20 of them. Rocker switches for $2. But it's like, it's this hardware store that doesn't understand what's going on. And it's like a very simple switch.
Really?
You go to Home Depot and you look at a motion detector, an occupancy switch, or you look at a switch that has a dimmer in it, or
Mhm.
you look for a switch that's got the LED that you need for controlling an LED light as opposed to an incandescent light. And they used to be, because I renovated my house a year or two ago, and I've bought things for my house when I bought it 10 years ago. These rocker switches were like $10, $12. They're like 30 to 6. I'm seeing $60 switches, and I'm like, this is crazy. So when a guy tells me it's $200 to like put a switch in, I go and I look at the metal enclosure that you have to run the wire through, whatever that's called, like the new work box or old work box, and it's like $8, and I'm like, that used to be $2. It's $8. The switch now is $50. So like right there, $60 or so is coming straight out of the goods. And you would say, well, he's still working for an hour and a half, you know, making $100 or something, which does seem high, but the value of the $100 is so much more worthless than it was before. That, yeah, he says maybe...
It's worth 6% less. It's not that much.
Well, that's what you would think based on that number.
Yeah.
But the inflation numbers never make sense to me because it's like the stock market has gone up by a lot more than 6%.
Sure.
So that's inflated more. But the dollar has lost value by 6%. And then if you look at this dollar index, I need to read more about it.
Is that comparing it to other
I think
currencies?
it compares it to other currencies, and it's on a scale, I think, of like to 100, but it's sitting around like 91. And all the economists are saying like, oh, it's pretty stable. Like it's doing really well. If it gets to like 87, that's when the dollar is starting to get really weak. But I haven't seen that the dollar's really been moving all that much.
Because everybody's been printing money, I guess.
I
Which
guess.
video's next?
Is there another?
I gotta go to bed, man.
You're getting tired?
Yeah.
Do that one there. Talk about Puerto Rico a little bit and have some positive
Since late
news.
October, there's been a lot of talk about Puerto Rico's COVID-19 vaccination rate. Former President Bill Clinton tweeted an article claiming the Caribbean island had the highest vaccination rate of any U.S. state or territory. So is that true? Let's verify. We went to these sources for an answer. As of November 10th, data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention shows 73.9% of Puerto Rico's total population has been fully vaccinated against COVID-19. That's the highest of any state or territory in the United States, according to CDC data. Puerto Rico's Department of Health shows a slightly lower vaccination rate at 70.5%. So Verify used population data from the 2020 census and the number of fully vaccinated people within each state or territory based on their local data available on November 10th to triple check those numbers. Using that data, we confirm that Puerto Rico still has the highest vaccination rate in the country. So we can verify, yes, according to both CDC data and local health department data, Puerto Rico has the highest COVID-19 vaccination rate of any U.S. state or territory. According to CDC data, Guam and Vermont have the next highest vaccination rates for COVID-19. With your fast fact.
What is strange about this is that it's been a while since I've been in the States, and it's been even longer than since I've been in the States in a very constrictive country or state. The states I've been in are like wide open. It's like Florida and South Carolina. I have not been anywhere where I see people driving around in their cars wearing masks.
Dude.
I come out of Home Depot, and the second I walk out, I pull my mask off, and I feel like everyone in the parking lot has their mask on, and they're staring at me like,
yeah, dude.
And I see this and think we are the highest vaccinated state in America, and yet people here are walking around like there's a pandemic going on. Like,
it is weird. Puerto Ricans love the masks. They don't seem to really care about the mandates. If they tried to do the mandates they did here in South Carolina, there would have been civil war.
It would have been bad.
But here, people are like, oh, stay at home. Okay. No problem.
And like, we've been joking that I think Puerto Rico is the only place I've flown into. I went to Italy, and I went to Turks and Caicos. I haven't gone all over the world, but I've traveled a little bit the last few months. Puerto Rico is the only place that when you show up and go down to get your luggage from baggage claim, you are greeted with people in hazmat suits. It looks like the movie Outbreak. Like, they're all walking around in space outfits, and I'm like, what is going on
They'll be in a hazmat suit with the hood off, and then with like a face shield and the mask pulled down below the nose or whatever. And I'm like,
yeah, they never had the mask on.
What are you wearing this whole thing with the gloves and the booties and stuff? You people look insane.
They do. And I'm like, what is going on? And so I saw this video, and I was like, I was looking up something else. I was actually looking up the next video about this vaccine mandate. And I was like, wow, Puerto Rico, we have the highest vaccine rate in America. Yet you drive around, it's like a single guy in his car. He's all masked up. And I'm like, what? What is going through your mind? Are you scared to be in your own car on the freeway?
I mean, I do have to admit, there are occasionally times, it doesn't happen to me really, but I have been in the car with Katie before. Yeah, where Katie forgets and she'll drive all the way home wearing the mask. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh gosh, I didn't even realize that was on. But it's very common here.
Yeah, I feel like most of the time I look over and people have their masks on in their cars. It's strange.
It's weird. All right, final video.
The one above it. So this one,
Anticipándose a lo que será la época.
I tried to find this video in English. I'm sorry, it's all in Spanish, but I got the subtitles. You can hit play.
I'll mute it.
And if you spoke Spanish, I guess you could listen to it. But basically, people in our community, and probably other communities in Puerto Rico, are really upset because our governor has just issued this mandate. Have you heard about this?
No.
He is now saying if you have 50 employees or more, they all must get vaccinated. Your business has to be vaccinated. If they choose not to get vaccinated, then they have to be tested once every week. Every 7 days, they must be vaccinated or must be tested. And, part of me was like, oh, this doesn't seem that crazy. Isn't this what already is going on? When I was in Italy, if you weren't vaccinated, you had to get tested to go out to eat and do these things. But this is the first time I think that anyone in the government in the United States has said there's a government mandate on your workforce. We've had government. Biden has come out and said, if you work for the government, right, you have to get vaccinated. If you work for the military, you have to get vaccinated. But I haven't heard anything about these mandates with private businesses.
I've heard something in the States where it was if you had over 100 employees, and I heard all these people talking like, I will literally fire employees to get down to 100 to not do this. Okay. So I don't know.
I haven't really heard a lot about that, but this is like even a more extreme version of that. And so here, people are like filing lawsuits and saying this is unconstitutional and it's my business. And if you don't want to work for me, then you don't, And I kind of see their point. I don't know where this line should be drawn.
It's like it's your business, it's your employees. It just feels like a dirty way for the government to say like, all right, we're not going to force the employee to do it, but they just keep adding more and more pressure to these people who aren't vaccinated. And they're like, okay, soon you're not going to be able to go to restaurants. Soon, if you want to go to the grocery store, it's only going to be on certain days of the week or whatever. Oh, you want a job? Well, you can't have that anymore.
I think the fear here is that the next step, okay, it's 50 people in a business, but the next step is, and I don't know if the Puerto Rican governor even has the power to do this, but maybe this is from the federal level, is what happens when they say you must be vaccinated to fly. Do you think that day will come? Because you literally can't get off this island. And there's a lot of people
Yeah,
here
that's
who are like,
crazy.
I do not want to get vaccinated.
I can't imagine they would do that. I think there's some sort of federal law or constitutional thing that's like the government cannot restrict travel or
It
something.
reminded me, there was a video I wanted to look up about OSHA. They just passed something that said that, OSHA laws are like, you can't have a staircase without a railing, and you have to do certain things so that your business workplace is safe.
Okay.
I think one of the workarounds through what you were saying about the government not being able to mandate vaccines has to do with OSHA, and I can't remember
So
exactly.
they just do it through the business thing.
Yeah, and they say OSHA
You're
might
right.
require now that you have to get a vaccine, and I don't know what's going on with that story, but that was something I heard about this month, that OSHA might be adding that rule in, which would be, I don't know, in my mind, I know we're about to wrap this up, maybe forever, but in my mind, it feels like this virus is ending, right? It's not totally down, but I feel like we all just don't care anymore. The fear-mongering on the news now is not nearly what it used to be. Maybe I just haven't been watching the news. Maybe it's just as bad, but I look at CNN and Fox News and the BBC. I go to those 3 websites every day at least once. And I don't feel like the top story, it's like Elon Musk is, trolling Bernie Sanders and selling his stock. Coronavirus isn't the #1 story anymore most of the time.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like we're off at the end of this, which makes me believe that these mandates can't possibly survive now. I could see them passing and getting some acceptance by some percentage of the community, population, if the virus was really bad and we're like, man, people are dying and it's looking just like it did a year ago. We're not out of this.
Yeah.
But when it feels like it's kind of subsiding and they're starting to talk about the flu season even maybe a little bit more, I just kind of feel like, are they going to be able to pull off these laws? Or are the vaccine passports and stuff about to just be over with and nobody cares? We've worked
like
so
everybody
hard to
says,
get here.
when the government takes a little bit of control, they don't ever give it back.
Yeah.
And they'll, maybe the vaccine passport thing goes away, but then they start doing more facial recognition stuff, and they start saying okay, to get into malls now, we need to know who you are, and I don't know what it would be, but I can't imagine that we're gonna take a step back from this now.
But I've talked to so many people, maybe even my wife, who I just ask, I'm like, what do you think is going to happen when this does go away? We're just going to forget about the last 2 years? Are we going to litigate anything? Are we going to go to war with anybody? Are we going to investigate anything more? Are we going to try to get to the bottom of this? Or are we all just going to be like, whew, glad that's over with. I'm just going to get back to my life and completely ignore that we screwed up a whole generation of kids who lost a year or 2 of homeschooling and all this weird social behavior because the virus? Are we going to ignore all these poor businesses and restaurants that we loved and frequented that just went bankrupt? Are we going to ignore all this inflation and crazy money printing that we've done? Are we going to ignore all these loans that we've all taken out that I don't even know what's going on with the PPP loans, and are those all just forgiven? And it just feels like all this crazy stuff has happened.
You know what? I think nobody's upset right now because everybody feels rich right now. I think everybody who owns a house is looking at Zillow and they're like, oh my gosh, I just made hundreds of thousands of dollars. And everybody who owns a car is going on Kelley Blue Book. Oh my gosh, look, my car's gone up from when I bought it a few years ago. Mine is literally worth more than when I bought it 6 years ago.
My Binance coin, oh my gosh, it's up 1,000x.
Exactly. Oh, my cartoon JPEG NFT, oh my gosh, this is worth $1,000 now. And so I think when it all starts to go back down, that's when people, can you imagine how pissed people are going to be when jobs are not available and their Bitcoin is no longer profitable? They're going to feel like, oh my gosh, now I have to take this out on somebody, and they're going to have tons of free time because they don't have a job. That's when they'll be held to pay. But right now, everybody just feels rich, and everybody's got the new PlayStation and the Xbox, and they got the new iPhone and MacBook.
What's so infuriating with the crypto world is I'm the first to admit that I used to read about crypto every day because I thought it was the future. This is back when it was Ethereum and Bitcoin, and there was a few others, IOTA, and XRP was the one the banks were going to adopt, and it seemed very promising. It was 2017. And then everything crashed in 2018. All those coins are worthless, right? But there's this new batch of coins, and they're all in the top 10. And you just talk to people, especially here. Maybe I'm a little jaded because the majority of people here are highly invested in Bitcoin. But I admit, I don't know a whole lot about all these new things, but I talk to them, and it just, everyone's like, oh yeah, man, I'm buying a 150-foot mega yacht with my crypto. And I just ask like basic questions like, how are we going to solve the problem of it being so complicated to use? Or what happens if you just accidentally send your money to the wrong address? How are we going to like, shouldn't there be like some third party that figures that out? And they all just like look at me like, you just don't understand. This is the future. And I can't totally argue with them when they've made some of these people, I mean, millions of dollars, you know?
Hundreds of millions.
Hundreds of millions of dollars. And I feel, it's like I feel so ashamed or inadequate or stupid. I feel like I don't really know what's going on. I see my friends around me doing these NFTs, and no matter how far I dig down and try to understand it, I read all the articles that are on all these big websites, and I'm like, this shit seems fucking stupid. Like, this is not the future of anything. If I want to be in a metaverse and dress up as a character, there's going to be another way to do that than to buy some, like, Pepe thing that's not even made by the creator. It's like an offshoot. It's just, it's so silly to me. And I'm like, it all feels like pump and dumps. Everybody's just like, oh yeah, I got out of that before it crashed. And I'm like, it crashed, but you were talking about how the technology was the reason to invest. I'm like, it's all just bullshit. It just reminds me of all of those pyramid marketing schemes. And these don't work like a pyramid marketing scheme, but they kind of work like a pyramid marketing scheme.
Yeah.
You get in early and you pump this thing up.
You convince everybody else. You got to get in. You got to get in. You got to get in.
And you see it with Elon. I feel like Elon's doing this with Bitcoin, but I feel like he's doing it with his own company. I feel like he just says crazy things, and Tesla goes to the moon. And then he says other crazy things, and Tesla just completely falls down. And the SEC is like, we're gonna hold you accountable, but like they don't.
But I don't know. I mean, I don't know. He's not lying. I don't know what he's doing that's so wrong. But I mean,
you think he was going to be acquired for 420? I think 420 secured. Was that even like? Does anyone know if that was even true?
I think they looked into that, and he actually did have the. I mean, obviously, in hindsight, that would have been the greatest thing he could have ever done.
Could he have just told Hertz, "Hey, just say that you have some like deal," and then like. It's just all of it feels like this weird market manipulation.
Have you been following Rivian's IPO?
I thought that was a scam company. I thought that was like
Rivian's legit. There's another one. Oh, what's the other one that's a scam? I forget. But there was another one that was vaporware.
I just have the two.
Rivian has a real truck, and I think they've delivered like 20 of them. And it looks nice. And it's, you know, Amazon's backed them, Ford has backed them, or whatever. But they've delivered like 20 trucks.
Yeah.
And they are valued at like the 5th most valuable car company on earth after delivering 20 cars. At least you could say Tesla has like the energy aspect. They've got the battery production. They've got the solar panels. Like Rivian literally makes 2 cars. And they're basically the exact same car. And I guess they make some van thing. But like, come on, man. I mean, when we look back on this time, people are going to go, were you people retarded? I mean, you can obviously see this is a bubble, right? But I feel like no one can see. And the truth is, a lot of people are like, yeah, I think it is a bubble, but I also think it's going to go up in the short term, and that's what I'm betting on right now, you know? It just feels like you can't lose.
Just shorting on the betting on the short term is just so incredibly difficult to time, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, because when it
Nikola,
falls...
Nikola's the
Nikola, that's what it was.
Company, yeah.
Yes, yes. But it's just, I don't know. I feel... This whole thing gives me anxiety because I'm invested in Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I'm watching, you know, that account go up. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, tons of money is just like, oh my gosh. And then it's gone. And then I get really depressed. I like say, oh my gosh, this went down 50%. I'm not in the red. I'm still like up.
Hundreds of percent.
But
up.
seeing that wave and like that kind of has prepared me for the stock market. I can see things come and crash, and it's not that big of a deal. Although maybe it should be more of a big deal in the real market than in crypto. But I don't know. It's just none of it feels normal. None of it feels right, and it doesn't feel to me like everyone getting their first home computer and connecting to the internet for the first time. It doesn't feel like buying the first iPhone and being like, oh my gosh, I can go to websites and navigate through this. It feels like, all right, None of this stuff really does anything, no matter how much they say.
It feels like going to Vegas and putting
Gas
money
tax,
on roulette.
it's just like how much things cost to just, like, I want to sell at the height, but then I'm like, it's going to cost a lot of money to do that. Like, real money I'm going to lose selling. I thought this was all supposed to be so cheap and, like, easy and fast and supposed to replace Visa. But, like, every time I sell my crypto, it sure doesn't feel like that. It's like I get a refund from any store, and I'm like, oh, there it is. I just called them. I see it's pending. And then in a day, it's like, it's totally back in my account. Have you sold enough crypto to where it's like missing for 24 hours and you're like, oh my gosh, did I send it to the wrong address? Have you dealt with that yet? You don't buy and sell crypto.
I sold all my crypto 6 months ago.
You don't have any Ethereum?
No.
That's painful.
It actually, maybe it should be painful, but I made 10x on my money, and I just feel
you
like
got to buy a house in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, but I just feel like I'm gonna wait until
10x. So you bought Ethereum at, how's 10x work? You bought it 200 and you sold it 2,000. Is that 10x?
I bought Ethereum at half at 200 and half at 100, and then I sold around like 1,500, 2,000, and then I bought Bitcoin at 5,000. And then I sold that at 60,000, so that was over 10x.
Okay. That's for a single period. That's as good as you could probably get.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, if it goes up 1,000% more in the next few months, I'm gonna shoot myself. But like even today, I looked at it today, and Bitcoin is below where I sold it 6 months ago or a few months ago.
Let me ask you this, because this goes through my mind a lot. There's a lot of people here in Puerto Rico and in my stateside investing groups where people are really scared that banks, have you heard of this? Banks now are like, apparently Banco Popular, depending on which branch you're in, will not let you send any cash to Coinbase. And I'm hearing other people saying like that there are certain accounts like in I don't know if it's Wells Fargo.
Why would they care?
That's my thinking, is why would they care? And when
Just like the kid at the swimming pool. Why do you care? Just bring me my food.
Do they care because if you throw too much of your money out of their bank into crypto and then you lose it all, that they are losing the collateral that they need to make money? Like they're
But it's your money. You can just take it out of the bank if you want.
But they don't want that either. Like, have you ever tried to take out money out of a bank? Have you ever gone to a bank and been like, I need $20,000 in cash, and they're like, "Ooh,
well, this one
I can give you 5." Like, I would shoot weddings, and it would be like, for whatever reason, I was like, I just want to get this money out of the bank, and they would be like, "We don't just have 20 grand," and I'm like, "You don't have 20 grand in cash at a bank?"
Well, that is crazy, but that makes a little more sense. With the bank here in Puerto Rico, I go in there and try to wire money for like pay the rent or like pay boat repairs or whatever. And they're always having to get the manager, and the manager's like, why are you transferring this much money? And I'm like, because I need a house to live in? Like, what is going on? This is my money. Let me send the money to who I want when I want. This is so strange that people are asking me what I'm doing with my own money. But apparently that's really normal here in Puerto Rico. But yeah, like if Bank of America started saying you can't wire money out.
I'm hearing people talk about this. They're
Really?
like, you need to get your money in, like they're doing all these roundabout ways, and I don't know if it's because they don't have enough money in the account. I don't know if they've gotten flagged by the IRS. I don't like. There was a part in the new infrastructure bill that specifically mentions crypto, about how if you trade crypto, like right now, my CPA, our CPA, maybe for the last 2 years, I've been asking. There's a question in your tax returns: have you traded crypto? And it's just a yes or no answer, but they don't ask anything more than that. But apparently, all I'm trying to say is when I hear that banks are starting to not let you take money and put it into Coinbase, and I see that the government is starting to pass laws about like, we're going to ask more about your crypto holdings because we want that to be taxed, it makes it feel like a more legitimate platform, right?
Mhm.
If crypto was just truly like this scam that's going to crash at any moment, it would feel like banks and the government wouldn't really care. But that doesn't seem to be what's happening. What seems to be happening is it's getting adopted more and more, which gives me maybe this false sense of like this could be the future. But you don't see didn't Nikola try to say that they got bought out by Ford, which was supposed to be like the most legit thing ever, and then Ford had to come back out and be like, GM and they had to come out and say, like, actually...
They weren't bought out. It was like they were going to team up on some sort of truck design or something, and then, yeah, it was a horrible look for GM, and then Nikola ended up being completely vaporware, for sure.
Do you think that's what's happening with banks and the government? Is that they're
No, I'm not saying that.
They're legitimizing crypto a little bit more than it needs to be?
I'm not saying that either. I think when crypto really starts, right now there's like 10,000 different coins and they're all jokey scams and meme cartoons. But when the true winners come to the top, and maybe that's going to be Bitcoin and Ethereum, I don't know. But when it's like really everyone knows and everyone can easily pay with like whatever this one coin is.
It's Tinder or
a mobile coin.
What's the dollar one that's like apparently a scam? It's like $1's a dollar. Tether.
Like okay.
It's Tether. That's the.
When that happens, I think the governments are going to start banning it, like they just did in China.
That was the greatest thing for crypto, though.
Well, how was that the greatest thing?
Look what it just did. People have said China constantly says they're banning it, and every time they do, it goes to the moon.
Why would that make it go to the moon?
I think it like legitimizes it.
I thought when they came out and said they were officially banning it, it
well, there's
tanked.
also this idea that maybe China owned a large percentage of Bitcoin, and there's this rule, I forget what it's called, but if you were ever to get 51% of all the Bitcoin, then suddenly now you could like take it over. And there's this idea, well, China is maybe the biggest holder of Bitcoin, and if they banned it, it allows Bitcoin to be a little bit more decentralized because it makes it harder in China, and China's the biggest holder, and that maybe that's good because it prevents them from, hoarding it all. The idea would be that you don't want any single government or agency to have the most amount of Bitcoin, or more than 50%.
So did China say that the government was no longer going to hold Bitcoin?
I don't think they said that.
I think the people can't have it, but we can have it.
I
It's
guess
crazy.
so.
Like, did you know that when we went off the gold standard, it became illegal to hold gold? I just
Illegal?
read. Yes, I need because I like.
And
I
then
don't know
what
how-
happened? Because eventually you could own gold jewelry and
Right.
hold
So
gold.
I need to read more into this, but I read that the other day and I was like, what? So I mean, if the government can do that, they can definitely come and say you can't have any Shiba coin.
I keep thinking, should I keep moving more dollars into Coinbase or some other exchange?
I'm
and
just
at least
nervous
have-
about having it all in that, man. It seems so shady. It just feels like, and I know Coinbase is the least shady of them all, but I've got all my money in there. It's just sitting, and I'm like, how long until I get
But
hacked?
you don't want to put it in the bank and then not be able to move it over. Because like I see Bitcoin's like down 11%, which isn't that much, but Bitcoin's taken a big hit the last week.
Yeah.
And I just keep thinking, man, the next time it feels like my gut is like, oh, my account's 50% down.
Yeah, you're going in hard?
I think I might go in. But see, my fear is it might pay off the first time, and I'm like, dude, that was the greatest move ever.
Then it goes down 90%.
Well, no. My fear is how can you train yourself to say one and done? Because you're going to want to play this game because it feels like gambling, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to want to do it again and again. And then eventually the stakes are so high that like everything you won on the first time or two are now lost by doing something even dumber, And so I keep thinking this with Dogecoin. Like Doge has this tendency to get to like 10 cents, and there's always a meme, Doge to $1. But imagine if you bought Doge at 20 cents and it went back up to 60 and you put a good amount of money in there. I feel like it seems predictable enough that it happens.
I would love for you to
But
try.
I don't even know how to buy Dogecoin.
I don't either.
It's like, that's the other frustrating thing. We're talking too much about cryptocurrency.
We are. Let's call it. I'm going to bed. I think you should rip off our wall.
Yeah.
And
Start
I'll
doing?
close us out
What are
as
you
you
gonna
rip
do?
the wall off. Well, I don't want it. Like I need
just
to
wanna
shut
show-
us down.
You just want to show my pants.
Nobody wants to see that.
Well, we don't want to make this too bad because we need to reset this up. And
Yeah, you can't mess it up. So yeah, we have to pack up this entire studio. I'm leaving on Tuesday. When are you leaving?
I leave Thanksgiving Day. That was the only flight I could afford.
We've got so much stuff that we need to sell. And I guess I'm going to put it on eBay, but I don't know if I have enough time. I was wondering if I put it on eBay, would you ship it out? But I don't think. Yeah,
That's a full-time job.
Yeah,
do that.
it's like 40 or 50 things that we have to sell. So I don't know what we're gonna do.
Look at that. Gravity backdrops. I
Don't.
actually really like these things. They can transform a room. You remember when our set used to look like this?
That looks so much worse. So much worse. It makes me think when I move into the next house, if I get it, about actually trying to paint the wall, like where you speckle the gray on there, and could you make it look good?
I've thought a lot about that because these walls, like some of them, the walls here are really nice. It's like they finished them pretty flat, but my walls, they almost look like popcorn ceiling on the walls, and so I've been sanding it to make it like a little less rough, but it doesn't look great. I was like, could you just get some plaster and make it look actually, I might not be talented enough to do this, but actually make, especially the bathrooms, make it look like something that's a little cooler. And then if you paint it, you can make it look like one of these backdrops and permanently do it. But I'm going to build my set in my garage. I have a 2-car garage that I'm enclosing. And so I could do anything in there. And if I kind of mess it up, it's like the next person that buys my house, it's a garage.
Exactly.
It's not a big deal.
And it'll look better than a normal garage.
But if you're going to do this in your master bedroom, you don't want to like do too many crazy.
Weird.
Yeah,
I know.
So.
Guys, it's been a good run.
It has.
Coronavirus Journal, over and out, forever.